Welcome to day 48 of our 52 days through Nehemiah. Today we are looking at Nehemiah chapter 12, verses 44 through 47. I'm Christy Birchfield. Let's take a look at what it says. It says, "On that day, men were appointed over the storerooms and the contributions, the first fruits, and the tithes, to gather into them the portions required by the law for the priests and for the Levites, according to the fields of the towns. For Judah rejoiced over the priests and the Levites who ministered. And they performed the service of their God and the service of purification, as did the singers and the gatekeepers, according to the command of David and his son Solomon. For long ago, in the days of David and Asaph, there were directors of the singers, and there were songs of praise and thanksgiving to God. And all Israel in the days of Zerubbabel and in the days of Nehemiah gave the daily portions for the singers and the gatekeepers, and they set apart that which was for the Levites, and the Levites set apart that which was for the sons of Aaron." Kind of an interesting passage here. What it's really talking about is how dedicated and focused the people of Israel were on making sure that they left the portions that were for the people, for the Levites, the servants, those who were doing the singing, the work in the temple, that they supplied what they needed, that they gave them the resources that they needed to be able to have. That was one of the things that was prescribed throughout the Old Testament and back in the law that Moses gave, was that the people were to be able to bring their portion to the Levites and support them. And I think it's an interesting idea that we have today, because we have to make sure when we have people we've been talking about leadership in the church and people who are leaders in the church, and we need to make sure that we're supporting the leaders in the church, regardless of whether they're perfect or not, because I guarantee that they're not perfect. They're not going to do everything that you want to do. Some people don't give money to church thinking, oh, well, I don't want to do that. I don't agree with what they're doing with that. At the end of the day, we give money to God. And then it's the leader's responsibility to do what God has told them to do with that money, and they'll be held accountable to that. Don't mistake your offering, because even though they were giving those offerings, people were giving these offerings and the Levites were going to use them for their own personal kind of welfare and I guess survival, basically, that made the offering any less special, or that it made the offering any less about being given to God than about being given to another man. When we give offerings, when we bring our tithes, when we bring what God has commanded us to bring into the house of God, and we give it, we're doing that in obedience to God, not in obedience to any man or anyone who's asked for anything like that. What that organization, that church, that leader decides to do with that money after that is between them and God. And we need to make sure that we're giving our money as God has told us to, our money, our time, our talents, everything, to be able to maintain that which God is doing. But realize we're accountable to make sure that the people know if we disagree or if we feel like they're not following God's commands or not being obedient to God. But ultimately, we give our money to God. And then other men or women determine how that money is going to be used. Keep that perspective in mind as you're looking at your offering and what you have to bring this week. Thanks so much for your time. We're coming up on the last chapter of Nehemiah, so we'll end the last few days going through the last chapter of Nehemiah. We'll see you tomorrow.